Really great game pitting the visiting Chicago Bears versus the host Vikings. I said as I was trying to blow that horn thing, right?
Right.
And it is a very frustrating game to watch for anybody who is even halfway a Bears fan because, oh, they have this annoying habit of putting Justin Fields in the wrong plays all the time. What do you think, Bill?
Well, I mean, for the most part, the offense has moved the ball extremely well for the Bears. They've made some mistakes at various points that bogged them down, but he's 13 of 17 or something like that. And so it's not like there's huge gaping problems. There's little fine-tuning things they need to do. They've gone with some screens that not everyone executed. They would have been possibly even big plays if everyone had the timing was correct, everyone executed, and frankly, I don't know why Khalil Herbert is needing more. And Roshan Johnson's a fine football player, but he's not as explosive. Some of those same plays, you don't have to hold your blocks as long, right?
Right.
So a lot of times, by the time Roshan Johnson gets where he's going, I mean, a wide receiver can only hold a block for so long because otherwise you'll get flagged or you'll get whipped, one or the other. These are not tight ends. These are not offensive linemen. These are, people who are 100. I mean, Darnell Mooney's 186 pounds or something. So you only can expect so much for a block to be held. Like I said, and you're in danger of a penalty. If someone gets to the point faster, you don't have to hold that block as long. So I hope that they start getting Herbert more involved. Kimmett's already made one big play. They should try to keep getting Cole Kimmett more involved. I don't know why they aren't using more screens. As I'm sure everyone knows, nobody blitzes more than does Brian Flores.
Right.
They blitz more than by everyone else by more than 10%. Right, the next team behind them is 11% behind them in blitz percentage.
Yeah, he makes Kansas City Chiefs defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo look tame.
He makes everyone look tame. Like I said, I have to go back to Jerry Glanville's Grits Blitz to think of somebody who blitz that much. So you need to take advantage of that. When a team's coming up on you like that, you have to take advantage of it. They need to attack the area that's been vacated. And like I said, screens, draws, things like that would allow them even maybe pop a big play. The other thing, obviously, they've done a great job of moving Dobbs off his spot, disrupting him. They've had a chance they've had shots at 4 interceptions. They've gotten a couple of interceptions, but they could have gotten even a couple more. If they keep that up, eventually they'll get another interception. That's why Josh Dobbs has not been a starter in this league. He's a guy who's talented, and as you're seeing, but he's still inexperienced despite the fact he's been in the league for a while, just because, like I say, he's been a backup most of the time. And he's a little loose with it in terms of keeping the ball out of harm's way. That's something we've seen even when he was back at Tennessee. But if they don't start to take advantage of the fact that Minnesota's a little bit out of sorts, they're going to let them hang around and the game's tied. They should be not blowing them out. They should be up by at least 2 scores. They'd be up by at least 2 scores, and they're not. So it's not just, is the play calling the world's best? No, but it's good enough that the play calling they've had already should have still resulted in probably at least one more touchdown. They have a missed field goal. Right. They should have probably at least one more touchdown. That was a series of just, silly mistakes. Now, one of the things that worked against them right after the interception was that, a player, unfortunately, Kyler Gordon had his helmet actually damaged. And he took his helmet off still on the field of play because of the damage to the helmet. He should have gotten off the field of play and taken his helmet off.
Yeah, he wasn't penalized for that mistakenly, wasn't he? It seemed like
he was penalized. Yes, the team was penalized. They lost 15 yards. It was a 39. They had a 39-yard return that was brought back because of it. So they would have gotten at least a field goal probably out of that possession, not for the fact that was assessed against them. Then they committed back-to-back offensive penalties. So they were moving in the wrong direction. If they literally didn't get the assessment from that penalty, they might have been able to at least attempt a long field goal right after the interception. But unfortunately, a combination of that penalty and then offensive mistakes pushed them out of field goal range. So that's more than just the play calling. That's execution. That's concentration. They've made just,
when we say
mistakes,
more balance, more
errors. So if they tighten up on those things, if they stop sort of shooting themselves in the foot, whatever you want to say about the play calling has been sufficient enough for them to move the ball up and down, up and down, up and down the field. Like many teams that aren't quite sure how to win football games, they are not very efficient in the red zone. They can fix that very easily. Well, I shouldn't say easily, but it's not that difficult when you have a quarterback who has the combination of both ability to run and pass.
Right.
You put a defense in a bind because when you get in the red zone, when you get across the 25, I promise you're spying Justin Fields. Or if you're not, you're going to regret it. So that person that's spying Justin Fields cannot drop into coverage. That means that you're declaring to the defense at that point, okay, you are at a numerical, it's sort of evened out, right? Normally the offense is at a numerical disadvantage because most quarterbacks are not really a threat to run. So now you have you have one guy sort of to 11 on 10 to some extent. The fact that you are isolating at least one defender, probably either a free safety or a linebacker, to watch Justin Fields all the time, now that the numbers are even. And if you are able to use things like read option, you're able to use things like little shovel passes or things like that, where you take advantage of the guy who's got his eyes on Justin Fields and now, boom, misdirection. Or even those little orbit sweeps, right? Where the receivers goes in orbit motion and you just got to touch pass it to him. Right. And if they drop it or it gets knocked down or whatever, now it's just a intercept, incomplete pass, so it's not a fumble. All those things put stress on a defense. And then you have Cole Kmet, who, while he's not quite TJ Hawkinson, is still a top 10 tight end. You get him, maybe running a crossing pattern. You've got the threat of run from Fields himself. You have Darnell Mooney, who's very, very fast. You can do that little orbit motion touch pass to him or threaten it, right? You can pump fake it, right? Just like you pump fake anything else. Now the defense responds to that for just a second. He can raise up and throw it to Hawkinson. He can take off himself. But you've got at least now two defenders frozen in place. The one who's watching Darnell Mooney in motion, the one who's watching Fields. Those two people cannot be dropping into coverage. So take advantage of those opportunities to freeze a defender. Remember the old Syracuse offense they ran? Willie Jeffries had designed what they call freeze option.
Yeah.
And the thing about that is obviously you need to have a quarterback who can run enough. Doesn't have to necessarily be an elite level athlete, but a good enough runner. Hey, Vinny.
Hey, guys.
That threat holds a defender.
Yeah. Just a minute. Last time I checked, it was 3-3 Bears Vikings tied.
Yep.
Very defensive.
They just sacked. Oh boy. Sorry, Vinny. They just sacked Mr. Hobbs on the first play of the third quarter. What were you saying?
Yes, I was trying to say that the Bears defense has looked really, really good today.
Yep.
Like really good. They've gotten a couple interceptions. The issue is that the Vikings defense is also having a really good day. Both defense doing well, but the Bears should be in the lead if Santos made the first field goal, which he missed, just right over to the right, wide right.
Montez Sweat, 2 sacks. Just got his second one just right now.
Yeah, he's been balling since coming to the Bears. I was concerned at first because, okay, he's going to be on a team that's not going to be contending for a playoff spot. But, hey, he's really been playing up to the contract that the Bears gave him. And, yeah, he's been the stud on that defense now. I mean, good for him. Good for him.
He's always been incredibly talented. I mean, think about a man that size running in the low 4.4s. This is a guy that ran a 4, right? Exactly.
Wow.
So when you're that size and can run like that, I mean, to put it in perspective, he's faster than Stephon Diggs, right? So just imagine a guy that big who can outrun Stephon Diggs.
Incredible.
If
you're out of need for a wide receiver, you can go and get him.
So now Montez Sweat is in a position to establish himself as a tier 1 pass rusher. And guess what? If he can do that, he will get another contract and with a lot of money in it. So this is an opportunity for him. Whatever happens with the Bears in terms of, as you said, contention or not, this is a big year for him. And he wants to show people he's worth every penny and more. The Bears should be, as you mentioned, the missed field goal, but they also should have had at least a field goal, if not a touchdown. right after that interception return, where they, like I said, they got penalized and they had 2 offensive penalties after the kind of weird defensive penalty where the guy took his helmet off. Kyler Gordon took his helmet off because of the damage to his helmet. Probably should have been a foul on the Vikings there because Brandon Powell is the one that damaged his helmet by pulling down on his face mask.
Yeah, I didn't even know that.
Watching this game, guys, you know, I was talking about this with my mom. Troy Aikman was making a critical comment about Justin Fields as if he was able to sit in the pocket and hit Darnell Mooney on a pass, and yet he was being rushed. If you go back and look at it, I'm thinking, is Troy actually watching this contest or something?
Yeah, he gets out, he breaks the pocket, he's on the move, there's someone chasing him. I think what Aikman wanted to do was once he got outside was reset and kind of settle down and fire it off. Now
but guess what? You know what happened? The middle linebacker and the onside linebacker have moved into that lane. So that's why I was asking if Troy had actually looked at the contest.
Sure.
You know, I was like, what? You know,
I mean, there was a little bit of a window to still throw it, but he would have had to get it off very quickly. He would have had to, like I said, set very quickly and probably would have taken a hit at that point. He would have to slow down to get it off.
He would have picked off easily by that time. That's what, you know, you have to factor in the defensive back, and in this case, the linebacker already being back there in a zone and they're moving to that side. I'm just a little touchy about how the announcers call games when Fields is a quarterback. We talked about this before.
Oh yeah.
They tend to make judgments, and it's almost like they go into this prep room, production room, and they decide ahead of time how they want you to think about the quarterback. No. You know,
I do find that with a lot of people that are on that, you know, talk about this stuff off, not us. I'm saying in general, when it comes to the Bears, there's always this idea of, oh, they're definitely going to move on from Fields. There's no guarantee.
They're definitely not going to move on from Fields. Look, let me explain something to everybody. This is Ryan Poles' entire plan playing out. I mean, not that they were tanking, but
the announcers don't need a team, man.
But they were anticipating not being a contender. Let's leave it at that. And all the moves he made were to have 2 very early draft picks. Right. So they might have the 1st and 3rd pick. I think that's what they would have right now: 1st and 3rd, or 1st and 4th.
Yeah, they'd have the 1st or like the 4th pick, I believe.
They'd have the 1st and 3rd and 4th. And what they're probably going to do is one of those picks are going to trade down, and one they might stick or even trade up. But they can only do that if they don't need a quarterback, right? That gives them the flexibility they need to move around with those 2 picks. And first of all, there's nothing that Justin Fields has done to make you think, if you actually watched him this year. Now, I know he got hurt, but prior to the injury, he was playing his best football.
Oh yeah, he has. Like he's like, even this game, he's been pretty well.
Well, right. I mean, you could see his development and growth. And just once again, if it's a 3-year plan, you don't want to bring in another quarterback in year 3, because now you have to another 3-year plan, and you may not get to that, right? The old joke about fattening frogs for snakes. You may not be the GM by the time the second quarterback is developed. Now, admittedly, Poles wasn't the guy. It was still Pace, right? Pace was the one responsible for drafting Justin Fields. But I think Ryan Poles took advantage of the fact there was already a young quarterback in place. You have a quarterback on a rookie deal. You have 2 very early draft picks. This is the time to strike. You have a lot of money to spend in the offseason because you have a lot of cap room. You have the ability to dominate the draft board. If they decide to move down with both of those early picks, they could end up walking away with 7 picks or 8 picks out of the top 50.
Yeah,
that's how you restock a team.
With the Bears, I think for starters, the number 1 pick, assuming that the Panthers continue to bottom out, especially after they got rid of Frank Reich, which I do feel very bad for. David Tepper, I don't think is good at his job as an owner. I think with that pick, assuming it's the number 1 pick or not, they will trade that back for a team that's in desperate need of a quarterback. Yep. So that could be the Patriots. That could be maybe the Giants. I'm not sure because they say Jones is still their guy, but you know,
there's a few teams that are in desperate need of a quarterback. And
I mean, the part of me feels like the Cardinals could, but they still have Kyler's salary. So
no, the Cardinals can't. Not at least not this year. They might. first of all, I don't think they're out on Kyler yet. But
No, I don't think so either.
But even if they were, they have to ride it out for at least one more year. So next year's draft, year after. I mean, technically speaking, this upcoming draft is next year's draft, but the year following, the 2025 draft is the draft where, if they decide to move on, where they'd be looking to draft a quarterback.
Yes, I think that would be the case.
Regarding the Cardinals, I will say one thing: the Cardinals next year will be in the playoffs.
Cardinals have looked competitive at many points this year. Also, I should say, with not only with the Cardinals, the Patriots. Are they just going to outright cut Dane? Are they going to just cut Mac Jones, or are they going to trade him someplace else?
They would like to be able to trade him now. It's not so easy to. I mean, it's easy to want to do something. You have to find somebody who wants Michael McCorkle Jones.
Do you want him?
I mean, that's the point I'm making. Like, there's not a huge market for him. But here's the other question marks. Is Tampa Bay a team? I mean, are they satisfied with their quarterback situation? Are they going to try to trade up?
I mean, Baker's played pretty well. Mike Evans he's been balling out like he always does.
Right.
Also, 90. By the way, I should mention this one little statistic for those people in the back. Everyone with 90 or more touchdowns receiving is in the Hall of Fame. Just saying. And Mike Evans is one of those.
That's a good point. I think Baker Mayfield is playing well enough to hold that job. I don't think he's playing well enough to lead them deep into the playoffs if they're lucky enough to get that far.
Well, and that's the point I'm making, is that he's a bridge.
Mm-hmm.
Even if they decide to keep him as,
though.
Well, he's a bridge to probably a draft pick because at some point. But here's the teams that are within striking distance of the Bears' 2 draft picks that could probably put together a package. New England, we already mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see if Washington is sold on Sam Howell or not.
I mean, I've liked him so far.
I'm sold on Sam Howell, but if they end up cleaning house, right, and Rivera's gone and other people are gone, very often they like to go and get their own quarterback. We'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, I mean, I will say,
guys, how about if they elevate Eric Bieniemy to be head coach?
Which may well happen, or at least
it could happen.
He'll most likely at least be the interim with a chance to sort of audition for the job long term if they move on from Rivera. And once again, everything I've heard Bieniemy say so far sounds like he's a big fan of Sam. But I'll stick a pin in that. But New England's a definite. To me, New England's a definite.
The Patriots need a quarterback bad.
100%. That's definite.
Yeah.
Tennessee is obviously going to continue to kick the tires on. They have a couple of young quarterbacks who are going to continue to kick the tires on both.
They have Will Levis. They have Malik Willis.
So those 2 guys are going to battle it out next year. And one of them will probably at least be the day 1 starter. So they're probably out of the marketplace. Las Vegas has the other AOC, right? Aiden O'Connell. The question is, are they sold on him? They may or may not want to trade up. But they'd have to do a lot to get up high enough to get to either one of the 2 picks that Chicago would have.
Here's a question. Let's say the Giants are okay with Jones for another year, and let's say the Commanders are okay with Howell for another year, and let's say the Bears are okay with Fields for another year, and hell, I think the Patriots will definitely get one. I think the Raiders could potentially get one as well. So that could lead some teams that don't need a quarterback as much. Like maybe the Seahawks could be interested. I mean, Geno Smith has kind of been down back to earth a little bit this year. Now, granted, there's a whole bunch of reasons for that. But still, maybe the Rams could take Stafford's replacement potentially.
Sure.
I think the Seahawks could do all with the new offensive coordinator because they're asking Geno to make throws that are just absolutely nonsensical. And they had a nice game plan initially with short throws to wide receivers and short quick outs. And then they got away from that. And now where they're at is something that's easy to stop with a 5-2. In other words, 5 short man from man 2 deep zone, and just go on variations from that. What they're doing this year is extremely disappointing compared to their approach last year.
Yeah. So I'm not going to fault Geno Smith that much, but in terms of wondering what their philosophy could be, I mean, there's a lot of questions that could be done. Here's another question I have. Let's say they don't want to keep Cousins. They don't want to re-sign him. And let's say, hypothetically, they're not too sure on Josh Dobbs. So the Vikings select a quarterback in the first round. Could that be possible, or maybe not as likely?
I think they'll definitely take a quarterback. I don't think it'll be in the first.
Mm-hmm.
I think we'll see. I mean, Dobbs has a few more games, obviously, to establish whether or not he's a guy that they would go with. And we're not even 100% sure Cousins will be ready to start anyway. I mean, when the season starts.
Right.
So they will draft a quarterback. They're going to need another quarterback no matter what. But it might. I don't think it'll be in the first.
Bill, there's also a rich group of experienced veterans coming out as free agents next year that I think will result in a lot of those quarterbacks coming out being pushed down a round or two, if not into drafted waters.
Yeah, like the more we look at these teams, like, we look at the AFC East. Well, yeah, you can say the Patriots, and maybe you could say the Jets, but you have Rodgers coming back, so I'm not really sure about that. AFC North, everyone.
Vinny froze again.
Is really tied up to their quarterback. AFC South, really just questions about the Titans. Like, a lot of the teams, for the most part, like, I mean, maybe you could take maybe the Falcons could be interested. Like, more so questions. Unless you're the Patriots, everyone has more like a question mark of could they draft a quarterback? Like, that's really the main question. The Patriots, definitely. Everyone else, more of a question mark.
Yeah, well, there's about 3 to 5 teams that will take a quarterback early. In the first or very early part of the second. Then you've got another 3 to 5 that will take a developmental player to sort of park behind an established starter, and one, if nothing else, get a cheaper, younger version of their current backup. Right? Teams don't want to pay too much to their backup. At some point, the Steelers are going to move on from Mitchell Trubisky. They're going to draft a quarterback, if only just to get cheaper at the backup quarterback.
Mason Rudolph, they're probably going to move on from too.
I promise you, they're moving on from Mason Rudolph.
I'm shocked he's even with the team, honestly.
Well, they're going to want a better option. They're going to draft that better option.
Oh yeah,
and so
Rudolph is not a starting caliber quarterback by any means.
Sure,
he's most famous for that hit to the head that he got against Garrett.
That would be probably the thing he's mostly known for. Yes.
Yeah.
And the Colts will probably squeeze one more year out of a combination of Minshew and Richardson. Richardson is the eventual starter, but they're going to get cheaper once again. They have one of the more expensive backups in the league, and that's a position where teams don't like to spend a lot of money. So they're going to, at some point, draft Minshew's replacement, probably this year. That person gets a year to sort of watch, right? Hold a clipboard, all that, run scout team, all that fun stuff. And then eventually, when I think Minshew's contract was not just a 2-year contract anyway, so which will be at the end of next year, he's a free agent. So that'll be one of those free agent veterans that Zenny was referring to. And that young quarterback will move.
Bears are leading 6-3 at the moment, and the Vikings have the ball 2nd and 9 at their own 44-yard line. Just want to give that up.
What are it? 6:44 left and counting.
Buffalo is another team that I think at some point wants to upgrade their backup. They're a very quarterback-centric offense, as you may have noted, and there's a big drop-off between their starter and their backup. And they may want to upgrade. Now, they might go sort of a mid-price veteran. But even if you go with a mid-price veteran behind Josh Allen, you're still going to want to draft.
Who would they get? Ryan Tannehill or something like that?
I mean, it depends on who becomes available and how much money they want. But yes, Tannehill will probably be in consideration. So we just talked about so many teams that might move on. If for some reason, I think it'd be silly to do so, but if for some reason the Washington Commanders decide to listen to trade offers for Sam Howell, if you're the Bills, you should pick up the phone, because while Sam Howell is not Josh Allen, he's way closer to Josh Allen than anybody they currently have on the roster.
I mean, the guy is leading the league in passing yards. That guy I know he's throwing the ball a lot, but if you're leading the league in starting, if you're leading the league in passing yards, I think you should be considered as a starter. So, I mean, granted, if he goes to the Bills, he's not going to be the starter regardless, but
right. But I'm just saying, if there's a change of regime in Washington, as I mentioned before, a lot of times they have their guy. I want my guy. That happens a lot when a new GM and a new coach come in. They decide they want their guy. some are open to, like we said, if it's Bieniemy and Bieniemy does get the job long term, and if he is a fan of Sam Howell's, then that closes that door. But if they sweep, everyone out, they get rid of the staff entirely and bring in a new one, that opens the door for possibly a new quarterback.
Do you guys want to
tied to Jones for at least one more year? But sorry, go ahead.
Do you guys want to do predictions for how the next several weeks will be?
Not right now because I haven't had a chance to. Eventually, we'll be able later this week.
Oh yeah, we could do something like that because ESPN released their playoff machine.
Right.
So right now, at the moment, the Ravens and the Eagles have the first round buys in the AFC, the number 1 seeds, and then the division winners. Then the wild card rounds will be the Chiefs hosting the Colts, then the Jaguars hosting the Browns, the Dolphins hosting the Steelers, and the NFC are the Niners hosting the Seahawks, the Lions hosting the Vikings, and the Falcons hosting the Cowboys.
Okay.
Also, with Dorian Thompson-Robinson out with a concussion, are they going to go to PJ Walker or are they going to put Joe Flacco as a starter now?
Yeah, at least it's at first it'll be PJ Walker. So PJ Walker, Philip Walker Jr. gets at least one more week, I believe, to ply his trade as an NFL starting quarterback. Because Flacco is, learning. I mean, he's a veteran. It won't take him too long, but he was at home watching television, a week ago. So it's going to take a little while to get him. We were sort of joking about what Josh Dobbs had to go through, just figuring out where the parking is. I mean, he's still. He's still figuring out, which food line to go to when he's at the facility, where, who's got which massage gun works the best. I mean, he's still learning everything about his new home. So,
yeah, if the Vikings win, they hold on to the 6th seed, but if they lose tonight, they fall to the 7th seed.
Right.
Also, right now, the Colts are the 7th seed. This is. I don't know about you, but I'm thinking the AFC South, if things go their way, I could realistically see the AFC South having 3 teams make the playoffs. So what do you guys think?
Yeah, I think it's quite possible. It is quite possible. Yeah.
What about you, Bill?
I think the Colts will sort of lose a little bit of – I mean, they've been a little fortunate in some of these games, but – I don't know if they'll be able to maintain at this level. I have to go double check the rest of their upcoming games.
Like you have the AFC North and the AFC South, I think, are most likely to get 3 teams. But the reason why I lean more towards the South than the North is mostly because the injuries to the quarterback for the Browns, and even though the Steelers are winning, they're winning with an offense is kind of so-so. Meanwhile, the AFC South, the Jaguars, which are legit. The Texans, which are very competitive, but I'm not sure if they're a division winner kind of team. And the Colts are a scrappy team that's winning these close games that would win just enough to get over that hump.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, like I said, I don't know if the Colts will be able to maintain. I need to check to see who their last, the last 6 games are against. But if they are able to make it, it would be quite an accomplishment considering what they've been through as a team. I just wonder, like I said, if they can maintain at this level. So many things sort of have to go right when you're playing with your backup quarterback. Now, some teams obviously are able to, like we said, soldier on and find a way into the playoffs, and not just another interception. Not just
another pick.
It was a tip ball interception, but yeah, another interception.
It is like the 3rd tip ball interception he's had today.
Yeah, and he could have had 2 others. So yeah, it's been a little bit of a rough day at the office, but yeah, they picked him off.
Yeah, I think the Bears are probably going to win this game, but moving forward for the Vikings, they are on their bye week next week, and then they're going to be against the Raiders in Las Vegas. Then in week 15, they're going to be against the Bengals in Cincinnati. Then they'll be against. Then they'll be hosting the Lions on Christmas Eve. And then they're going to be hosting the Packers. And then week 18, they're going to be against the Lions. Like that, this is going to be a big stretch for them, the Vikings. If they lose this game, this stretch gets tougher and tougher.
Right.
And also we mentioned the Packers. Like, the NFC is a lot weaker, so the Packers could very well be on their tail. I don't know if they'll be a playoff team, but who do you think are the wild card teams in the
NFC?
NFC, guys?
Well, that's a great question. I think that based on what I've seen thus far, I think that, Minnesota is sort of hanging on by its toenails, but I think Seattle will end up being one of the wild card teams. I think, the Steelers are going to be a wild card. I'm sorry. Seattle. I saw you said the AFC, NFC. I think Seattle. I think Dallas. I think that San Francisco. Well, no, San Francisco probably ends up winning the West. So I think that. That's a good question. Who else? If New Orleans doesn't win, could they?
They'd have to be like the 7th seed, really.
That's what I'm saying. I'm trying to think I think they might be the last team in if they don't end up winning the division. So whichever one of those teams doesn't win the division, I think ends up being the 8th seed.
David Compton,
There's no 8th seed. There's only a 5 through 7 seed.
I mean, that's what I meant. 7th seed. So
gentlemen, David Compton, our investor, has a question. Yes.
Okay.
What about the 49ers-Eagles game? What you think?
Eagles.
The Eagles are the best team in the NFL, and I've been saying this since before the season began. I'm not about to change my mind now, especially the way they're playing.
49ers.
My mom says Niners.
Shanahan.
She says Shanahan.
Well, unless Shanahan's going to take the field, I don't know if he'll be able to overcome what the Eagles can put out there. They're just so good in so many areas. They play their best when their best is needed. And you see how they get into situations where, things don't look great. They're down. They've won, is it 4 games this season when they've been behind by 10 or more points in the second half? Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
I think they've come from behind from double-digit leads in the second half at least 4 times this season.
If they don't sack Kirk, they're gonna win.
So they have a great pass rush. They have a good secondary. They have a very effective running game. They have 2 top-tier pass receivers. There's a lot that they can throw at you, and the main thing that I keep coming back to is the team's sort of mental, physical toughness. Like, they really believe they're going to win every game no matter what happens. And they're just a team that doesn't let up, right? No matter what you do to them, they don't let up. They fight you tooth and nail the whole time. And they just have a lot of talent also. I mean, back to Howie Roseman, right? They lost Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. They had this hole in their secondary before the trading deadline. He goes out and gets Kevin Byard. Kevin Byard earns his keep almost immediately, right? Gets a key interception. I mean, almost immediately since joining the team. The talent evaluation, that's why somebody should be rating that front office for their GMs. They have some guys that are just really good at their jobs. They have a tremendous front office, maybe the best one in the NFL. They not only put together a tremendous bunch of starters, but look at the depth of talent. Brandon Graham is now a part-time player.
Mm-hmm.
Jalen Carter is now slowly but surely evolving into a real tremendous disruptor paired with Fletcher Cox. Jordan Davis is still a part-timer, but he's this enormous mountain of a human being that just throws people around like empty wastebaskets. And he's a part-timer, right? They have part-time players that are better than most teams' starters. Josh Sweat only plays about 34.5% or something of the snaps. And if he played more, he'd be one of the guys threatening to lead for sacks. His pass rush win rate, I think, is in the top 6 or 7 in the NFL. They are so loaded. And
this is a loaded team. How are they able to afford it? Is it because of Hurts's contract?
Part of it's Hurts's contract. Part of it is that they're going to have to move on some guys at the end of this year. So this is their last year for Fletcher Cox, and they'd like to win one more before he goes. Last year for Kelsey, they'd like to win one more. Because remember, each of those guys did a team-friendly extension, 1-year extension. So those guys are going to either be retired or playing somewhere else next year. I think Jason Kelsey will be in somebody's TV booth, and he'll be terrific at it. But so they have one more year, one last ride with a couple of these older players whose contracts are not huge, but they need to make that space. But they draft well, right? So it's a combination of things. They draft well, they pay people what they're worth, but they don't overpay. Like they really have a great understanding of how much you can pay a player so that player feels valued and knows that you want them there, but not so much that you are hamstrung by their contract. So they just have a great front office. Like I just said, they develop relationships with players that are close enough that the players feel valued, but not so close that it clouds your vision of what you should be paying that player. It's a very fine line, and some teams, like the Cowboys, don't know how to tread it. But the Eagles do.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah, gentlemen, I'm going to leave you two to continue talking about it, and I'm going to take care of another chore here.
Okay.
And folks, give them wait a minute. Mr. Compton writes, no, the Eagles will come up short in that game. I'll put something on that game. Any takers? Heck no, I am not taking that. I am not touching that with it. My mom's a Niners. I'm not touching with a 10-foot pole.
I might. I guess it depends on what the terms of it are. I might consider that. I just think that the Eagles
I know nothing.
The Eagles find a way to win games, right? They find a way to win games against good teams, against bad teams, against whoever you stack up against them. The Buffalo Bills had many opportunities to win that game. Now, part of it, the Bills own some of that, but when the Eagles needed a play to be made, whether it be offense, defense, special teams, that play was made. Look at what Olamide Zaccheaus does, right? He's the wide receiver 3 on that team. Came as I think, undrafted free agent out of University of Virginia. And was mostly a special teamer. They needed a play to be made. You have Jalen Hurts flush from the pocket, rolls, far up, just outside the hash to the far side, turns, throws back across his body, which you normally don't want to do, but finds Zaccheaus. Zaccheaus creates just enough space between he and the defender to jump up, make that touchdown, that if they don't make that play, they lose that game. So you're talking about players that are not stars, not big names. Most people don't even know who Olamide Zaccheaus is. He makes a game-winning play. Mm-hmm. That's the way that team is constructed. And I like them against pretty much anybody. So, bring up whoever you want to bring up. I'm probably going to take the Eagles.
Mm-hmm. Also, guys, right now, this is what I see happening at the moment. I'm actually thinking that the Packers might sneak in the playoffs. What do you guys think?
Could happen.
Well, the Packers were my preseason NFC Super Bowl representative. So at least I'll feel less silly if they at least make the playoffs. I originally had Green Bay versus the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. Now
you saw Jordan Love. You saw Jordan Love taking the team to the Super Bowl in his first year as a starter.
Well, I thought the defense would be way better. Is what I really thought would happen. I thought he would be a good enough game manager they could make it to the Super Bowl. But the defense has not played. No, they're starting to play better recently. But like I said, the Eagles are the best team I've seen so far this year. So, obviously I've moved a bit off of the Packers, but the Packers are at least moving in the right direction. And I could see them by this time next year, being a team that could make a deep playoff run. Once again, assuming they draft well, which normally they do, but they would need to draft well. They did find a replacement for David Bakhtiari, who's come to the end of his haul of very good career. They need at least one more receiver. And, they have a couple of good receivers. Jaden Reed has emerged as a good slot player. I like Romeo Doubs as your sort of classic X, and then the speed Z, your sort of Alvin Harper type in Christian Watson. They need basically just one more receiver, maybe a possession guy to go with it. Right now, that's Dontavian Wicks, who is not a bad player, but they should try to upgrade. I like a lot what they've got in Luke Musgrave, who I think is battling an injury right now, but he's a talented young guy. His backup is Tucker Croft, who's also super talented. So they have two young, inexpensive, but very talented tight ends. They have to fix the offensive line. They need to find one more pass rusher on the defense. I like their secondary. I'm not wild about their line. Well, I'm wild about one of their linebackers. I'm not wild about the other linebackers. But they have at least one linebacker I really, really like, and they probably need to draft at least one more linebacker. They need a guard. Their center situation's okay. They definitely need, I would draft 2 tackles, but they need at least 1 tackle. But they're not that far from being a contender. And when I think about the way certain front offices, certain teams evaluate talent, you have the Seattle Seahawks, which do things sort of their own way. And then you have the Patriots do things very much their own way, maybe too much their own way. But most teams, especially the ones that belong to Blesto, start sort of with the same. He said, "Give me what you got, and I'll be happy." Okay.
Old. He said, "Old Bill, give me what you got, and I'll be happy." That's what Davis challenging you to a bet.
Okay, well, let's discuss it then. What the terms of it would be.
I will say with Bakhtiari, like he had that 5-year stretch where he was an All-Pro. What's going to hurt him is just because at the moment it's only 5 per year, but also 2 is because outside of those 5 years, like the last 3 years, his season ended due to injury. Like that's what's going to hurt him.
Right. He just wasn't able to be on the field. I mean, it's very simple with him. Like the old joke is, you can't help the club in the tub. He's just a guy that just wasn't playing enough.
Oh, Dave, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Bill.
So whether or not they bring him back, I don't think they will. They still need to draft his replacement because he doesn't play enough. They have Elgton Jenkins is a guy they're going to build around. They have some players they can build around, but they need more of them on the offensive line. One is they want to be more of a running team, partially because they have a young quarterback. We just talked about that. And they're going to draft also probably at least one young running back to go with the 2 more established guys that they have. But running backs, after about 5 or 6 years, you're looking to move on from them anyway. So one of those running backs may, in fact, not be on the team next year. But whether or not, even though those 2 guys come back, they're going to draft a younger running back. You always want to draft at least one young running back if you're a team that likes to run the football. But if they can, like I said, upgrade at least 1 receiver, they have 3 good, young, inexpensive receivers. They're probably going to add 1 more to that group. They need to fix the offensive line. Like I said, 1 pass rusher. They have someone who would be a good number 2. They need a number 1 pass rusher. It's probably what they'll be the first thing they'll address. Probably is their pass rush, because the top tier pass rushers don't stick around on the board very long. Either that or their future left tackle. So I'm pretty sure that either someone who rushes the passer or someone who protects the passer, their first pick in the first round for the Green Bay Packers.
All right. So I am going to leave you guys to fight that off. Or figure out your terms with Mr. Compton, who has not chimed in on that yet. And we are going to resume watching the contest. I said Dave terms, so Bill, your ball's in your court. Well, actually, ball's in his court because he hasn't offered any terms. Both of you are selling Wolf tickets right now. I'm instigating. And I will chime in periodically, but carry on, gentlemen, while we watch this Monday Night Football game. And I will leave the studio, exit stage, even though it's actually exit stage left. So I will leave the studio, exit stage left.
There you go, exit stage left.
Yes, yeah, okay. All right.
See you later. Okay, so as I was saying before with Bakhtiari, and even if I am big with linemen, the issue is there's many I want more than him, and I don't know, Joe Saley I think is a better case. Andrew Whitworth I think has a better case. If you're talking about one that might be somewhat similar, you can make a better case for Mitchell Schwartz. Even though he was more of a right tackle, but still, So
I mean, the guys that were shoe-ins amongst tackles, guys are shoe-ins. Jason Peters, who is playing again.
He's playing with the Seahawks. Yeah,
right. He's playing again. But eventually, when he retires for good, that guy's a shoe-in.
Yeah.
And of course, Trent Williams is a shoe-in.
Yeah, he did definitely, no question. Williams.
Anyone else? There's going to have to be some discussion, right? There's only two guys that there's 100% definitely in.
What about Tyron Smith? You're forgetting him.
I'm not forgetting him. I don't think he's a shoe-in. I mean, it's not quite as bad as Bakhtiari, but he also right in the prime of his career started missing more than half a season. I think twice back to back he missed.
Yeah, that's the issue with him.
So that's another guy that I don't. They get another one. They got another one.
What do you mean they got another one?
Another interception.
Wait. The Vikings threw another pick?
Yep.
Are you kidding me?
I'm most certainly not.
Oh my God. Is this actually on Dobbs this time?
Well, I'm going to guess it's another tip ball, but let's take a look. Oh, you know what? He shouldn't have been thrown that. That's on him because.
So 0 for 4.
He should have just taken the sack. So it's one of those situations where you're being sacked and he's just trying to get the ball out, but just take the sack. That one's 100% on him because he should have taken the sack.
Yeah, that's not good. That's not good at all.
It's a great play by Kyler Gordon because it's a tip ball situation. A defensive lineman almost catches it, almost jumps up and spears it. But then being a defensive lineman, their hands are all sort of taped up and half mangled. So he's not able to pull it in. So it's kind of leaving him. And as he's sort of watching it, leave his hands, Gordon comes up from the secondary and jumps, sort of jumps down and catches it, sort of like almost like an outfielder running in to catch a pop fly and diving at the last moment.
Yeah. I'm just looking at some of this stuff for, linemen and everything. So also, you also, Joe Staley's this debatable one, Whitworth's another debatable one. Don't forget, you still have Lomas Brown and you still have Richmond Webb, who haven't even been semifinalists.
Right. I was just talking about guys who were active. But yes, if we want to go guys that, from other eras, it's going to take us a while longer than I'd like to spend. But I was just thinking about active tackles.
Oh, yeah.
And I guess other guys too. But I was thinking tackles first. The ones, like I said, there's two shoe-ins and everybody else, there'll be some discussion about.
Yeah, there'll be some discussion. And fortunately, with my expertise, things will be a little bit easier, much to the chagrin of some people. But, suffice to say, shut up. Not you, them.
Well, until...
It'll be easier. Don't worry, guys. I'll make it better for you all.
Well, until that happens, I'll operate until that happens with the understanding that it'll be the same number of players admitted per year, at least until, things change, which they have not as of yet.
Well, they've slowly gotten a bit better with seniors.
They've gotten better with seniors. Yes, I agree. It was once, very difficult, but still very difficult. It was once almost impossible.
It still feels almost impossible for non-players, and you know how much I love those.
Right. And that's understandable.
Yeah. Also, this is what I was going to say for what do you think of David Tepper's ownership so far? Bad.
Well, I think he's trying to figure things out on the fly. I mean, he's new to this, new-ish to this. Newish to this. I think he's a competitive person with a lot of. These are rich people, and this is a hobby for them, right? They love competition. They love, hopefully, football as well, and they have a lot of money, and they want to have. When you're a super, super rich person. And you usually hang with what kind of people? Other super rich people. You're looking for something that separates you. Well, I have a super yacht. Well, I have two, right? Well, there comes a point where you want something that they can't just run out and buy to match you. Well, good luck on running out and buying an NFL franchise.
His net worth is $20.6 billion.
Correct. Yes.
Man, can you imagine? I don't know what I would do with $20.6 billion. I'll tell you one thing, I'd get a couple people in the Hollywood Walk of Fame. That's what I would do. Okay, well, now it's evened up a little. Now it's 1 turnover to 4. Now the Chicago in the high red zone just turned 1 over. Fields was taking off and running. At least the Vikings have a chance to take the lead now. Well, first they needed to not turn the ball over again.
But yeah, they've been trying to strip it out, and they were finally successful. And though Fields had two hands on the ball, he didn't have it the classic high and tight. He was holding it sort of like this, almost as if he wanted to maintain his passing posture, but it's clear he's going to go and run. Once you're just going to run, go ahead and just tuck it away like a running back, kids. If you're watching at home and you're a young running back or a young quarterback, I should say, yeah, once you're in the traffic, once you've stopped dropping or stopped rolling and now you're moving forward, go ahead and get those 7 points of pressure.
I don't know if I ever asked you, but how'd you become a Steelers fan despite not living in Western Pennsylvania?
Sure. I think I've told my origin story at least once, but I'll do it again. So on the 17th of September, 1972, I think it was 72, I think it was the CBS game.
No, it would be NBC because it's
NBC, right? NBC. Well, but is that what it was in those days?
Yes, it was because you had the CBS, NFC, and NBC had the AFC. That's what it was like.
Yes. Okay, that's right. That's right. So 72, that would have been right. Okay. Right. So yeah, it was. You're right. It was the NBC game, which I think might have been Dick Enberg. No, it wasn't Enberg. It was who was calling that game? Well, we don't have to worry about that part. But the I'm having a birthday party. It's like a football themed birthday party. I'm already a big fan of the game, and
did you have your own team or no? Not really.
Well, the main team I had at that point is Washington, simply because I grew up I'm living in North Carolina at the time, but I though I was born in Philadelphia, I grew up in the Tidewater of Virginia, so Norfolk and Virginia Beach. I lived in both. Lived in Norfolk till we moved to North Carolina in 1970.
You were a fan of the potatoes.
I was a fan of the Washington franchise. And my father was not, because in his time, when he was growing up,
potatoes.
Well, at the time that he was growing up, they were, of course, the last all white team in the NFL, and so he was a fan of the Colts, who were fairly well integrated, so and weren't super far away in Baltimore. So that was, while I was around, my dad's fandom was polarized mostly towards, in football at least, was polarized mostly towards the Colts. So I always had a little bit of a soft spot for the Colts, but I was a Washington fan, and I was sort of a free agent in the AFC because there were no AFC teams anywhere close. The Dolphins certainly weren't close, and like I said, the closest was the Colts, and like I said, it was my dad's team. So I always paid attention to them. I always had a soft-ish spot for them. But we're sitting down to cut the cake and whatever and have the party. And game's on because I'm a big old football fan. And it's the first game of the season, in fact. And it's a game versus the Oakland Raiders. The Oakland Raiders, to my 5-year-old mind, encompassed very simple thinking, but everything bad, right? They literally looked like a biker gang in those days. They played kind of like one as well.
Yes, indeed, they did. And you were correct. They were against the Raiders the first game of the season.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I mean, this is my event that made me a Steelers fan, so I remember it quite clearly. They went down, I think, by 2 scores at halftime, and had to stage a furious comeback, and were successful in staging said furious comeback, and ended up winning. I think it was 34-28, and it was a big deal because this is the first time the Steelers had started being good. Most people think of the Steelers as this sort of dynasty and things like that, but this was the year that sort of headed them in the dynasty direction.
They were bad for a long time. Only one playoff appearance.
They were bad for a long time. I think they were 7-7 maybe the year prior, which was still an improvement over.
They had a lot of bad years. I mean, they were a joke for a while.
Right. In 71, I believe they went 7-7, which was, like I said, still an improvement because they'd been very, very bad, very, very bad prior to that. And so I think they maybe went from being like 3-11 to 5-9 to 7-7, and then big jump to 11-3 that season. And still Bradshaw was struggling. He played really well for a little while. Then he ended up getting benched, and we'd bring Terry Hanratty back on, but things like that. But this is before Franco. So Frenchie Fuqua, I think, was the main running back that day. This was still, like I said, the pre-dynasty Steelers. So it was, good players, especially on defense. They are really good players on defense. But their offense was still kind of a mishmash of good players and guys who were just sort of okay players. But it was a thrilling game. Franco was a rookie. Frenchie Fuqua, the wide receivers were Ron Shanklin and Frank Lewis, were solid but unspectacular. John McMicken was the tight end. The offensive line was beginning to lay down sort of the beginning of what it would be. They had 3 good offensive linemen and 2 offensive linemen, but John Kolb was a really good player. Sam Davis was all right. Roy Mansfield was a really good player. Bruce Van Dyke was all right. And Jerry Mullins was a good player. Moon Mullins, they call him. Those guys were all good. They had J.C. Greenwood and Mean Joe came in the 69 draft. They had L.C. Greenwood already. Ben McGee, who later would give way to Gary Furness, was the other tackle, and they had Dwight White already. So they had, 3 out of 4 of the pieces that would be part of that dynasty run at defensive line. They already had Jack Ham, and then obviously in the amazing 74 draft, they would pick up, his partner in crime, Jack Lambert. But they had Andy Russell, who was a guy who I think at least deserves serious Hall of Fame consideration.
He does. He does. Him and Greenwood. I know that our group, not this group, but I know that Brian didn't think that, Greenwood was actually that good. But then
I could see people not buying into Greenwood. I think Andy Russell probably deserves a little more.
Yeah, but they're better than Henry Thomas, that's for sure.
Right. So, like I said, you had Henry Davis, Andy Russell, and Jack Ham. Ham, of course, became a Hall of Famer. Lambert comes in, like I said, in the 74 draft. They had John Rouser at one corner. They had Mel Blount, of course, Hall of Famer, at the other corner. Ralph Anderson and Mike Wagner. Now, Wagner was so good that when they didn't draft Donnie Shell, but they got Shell in 74.
Yeah, he was undrafted, but he was in that same year as that illustrious draft.
Yep. He comes in undrafted free agent out of South Carolina State, but he doesn't start. He's a special teamer for about 3 years because that's how good Mike Wagner was. People don't remember Mike Wagner, but Mike Wagner was a really good football player. But yeah, so that was the team at that point, and the era was pointing in the right direction. They were a playoff team that year. You could tell that they were a team on the rise. And so I became a fan before they became, this juggernaut, this dynasty. But I became a fan when they at least were heading in the right direction. And so, that was my watching them during my birthday, come from behind to beat the Raiders. And my dad and I both rooted against the Raiders, right? Because, the Raiders used to really beat up on the Colts at that time. And, physically beat up on them. This is a different era of football, Vinny. It was very, very violent.
Oh, I'm aware. And people would say that even the era before theirs was even tougher because of how much aggressive they were. I mean, everyone has, a preference for their errors, and they have reasons why theirs is better and reasons why their error is not as good.
Sure. Well, I think this era sort of combines when I sort of become a fan. Of course, everyone probably thinks this about their era when they became a fan, but you now had the game at least becoming a little more integrated. Even Washington had a sprinkling of black players by 72. And
it was eventually going to happen at some point.
Right. I mean, they had, a future Hall of Famer. Well, they had 2. I mean, Bobby Mitchell
was their first ever black player. Like his number.
I'm very aware of that. Yes. And the whole story behind it. But they had Bobby Mitchell, and then they also had Charlie Taylor by that point. They had a couple of
another legend.
Yep.
But
by 72, they had Mike Bass. They had
don't forget Ernie Davis was drafted by them too.
Oh, I'm very aware of that. Also, one of Lombardi's favorite players, and one of his, in the last draft that he ever had before he unfortunately got really too sick, He drafted one of my first favorite football players, little number 43 from Kansas State, running back named Larry Brown.
Oh, he has a case. I mean, he was a semifinalist. I'm not saying he'll
The
make
problem is once again just such a short career because he was a 5'9", 203-pound power back, and he ran into people and over people, but he was too small to do it consistently. And he had a 1,400-yard season in a 14-game season right out of the box. I think it might have been his rookie, or I think it was rookie season. And he had another really good year, but then he sort of started to tail off precipitously not too long after that. So that was the issue for him. He couldn't. If he had a couple more good seasons, I could see.
He will, but I will say, not saying it's gonna happen, not saying it won't happen. But he was a semifinalist this year, so your little Bill has a little bit of a smile on his face, I guess.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite football players. He was just so tough.
Oh, for me, my version was like Tiki Barber. Really, I was very upset when he decided to retire. And
yes. Tiki has a better case than Larry Brown.
Oh yeah. I mean, Tiki Barber, his approximate value is actually really high, actually.
Right. Yeah. He should get in at some point.
Tiki, I was screaming there, but you're probably wondering, Vin, like, are you a fan of the Giants? Are you wondering that question?
I was not, but but you can answer it if you'd like.
What team do you think I'm a fan of?
Well, I know your dad's a Jets fan, right?
No, he's a Giants fan.
Oh, your dad's a Giants fan. Okay.
He's a Giants fan, not a Jets fan.
You're the Jets fan. Okay.
I'm not a Jets fan.
Oh, okay, good. Good for you. Don't do that.
Why would I be a Jets fan?
That's an excellent question. Why would anybody? Okay. Gotcha.
What team do you think I'm a fan of?
Well, I mean, we've sort of exhausted the ones that are a short drive from you. So I guess for you, it's not a regionally based thing then, if it's not Giants or Jets.
No. Well, I liked the Giants when I was younger, but what happened is that once I, got into the sports really seriously, because, there's a whole story here. Around like 9th grade, I was bullied a lot in school. And the final straw was when I was, let's just say the A word in the locker room by a kid. And, stuff like that happened. Then I transferred to St. John the Baptist. And, I really got into the sports as a result, because I was like a coping. I'm still into this day. In fact, and Mr. Carroll Collins, I'll never forget him. Him and I was speaking a lot about it. I said, hey, you want to be part of the radio station? And I said, sure. And that's how it happened. But, I kind of wanted my own team, because the Giants at that time were really bad. The Jets were still very bad. So I was looking around. Who do you think it is, first off?
Okay. So let me just think about the timeline. So you are.
So like I'm 15 years old.
15,
It's 2014. I get into sports kind of seriously.
Whew. Okay. God, you're so young. Okay, so
you're so old.
or right. Also true. So let me think. So let's see. Around that time, teams that would have been good. Well, the 49ers are good.
No, the 49ers were like kind of getting mediocre at that point.
Okay.
Seahawks were really good. They were kind of the team I didn't really like as much. I kind of liked the Patriots, but I didn't like them for much longer because I kind of wanted to see Brady win, but I greatly regretted it as time went on. I was thinking of the Eagles, actually, a little bit, because, hey, they were making some moves.
Right.
And I was thinking of the Rams, too, because they were in Hard Knocks. They moved to Los Angeles. They were getting a lot of buzz.
True. They were getting a lot of buzz.
Remember, 2015, the Panthers were very popular.
Right, because of Cam.
Mm-hmm. What do you think? What team do you think it is then?
Hawkinson. Okay, so the game is now tied up, pending a point after touchdown by the Vikings.
You're in that, and it's in that like mid 2010s range.
Right. I mean, I could say Atlanta, but I think you're more.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
It is Atlanta. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Why are you not sure of Atlanta though?
Well, I wasn't sure. I was guessing, but yeah, I mean, I know that you liked Matty Ice, Matthew Thomas Ryan,
mm-hmm.
and they were a fun team, to watch. I mean, they had, Hall of Famer or two on the team. Keith Brookings was getting towards the end, I think, of his career at that point.
Tuggle has a Hall of Fame case. I'm not really sure about Brookings, because Brookings, he had a lot of tackles too, but not as many as Tuggle. Tuggle was just historically good as a tackler, but
yes,
that was before my time, really. Like the Falcons, I became a fan of them because I didn't really know what team I'd have, and I see this guy, this guy that won an MVP. The media was just trashing him nonstop. And I look at how the demeanor was for him compared to how Cam was after the Super Bowl loss to the Broncos. And you see one guy get all the attention, this and that. But you have this other guy who's not flashy, very, very plain, didn't really do anything wrong. It was just the wrong place, the wrong time for his teammates. And you had a lot of nonsense from like the media saying, "Oh, is Matt Ryan actually liked in Atlanta?" Which, the more I look at it now, kind of pisses me off because they're just upset that it's not Vic in the Super Bowl. Really, Stephen A. Smith was saying that, and that I, as someone who was going to be someone who was already interested in Hall of Fame stuff, but need to also kind of look for his guy that he would really stump for. I found him. That's how it happened. It's because I felt bad for him after the Super Bowl, and I said, I'll claim this guy. I'll claim this guy as my own. I'll claim this as my own team now, and that's how it happened. And so this day, yeah, I am. I'm a fan of the Atlanta Falcons.
Gotcha.
So that's the story. That's the story of that.
Gotcha.
So Ryan is a very, very personal one for me. He is very personal,
right?
Because I will admit that I don't know if I would be doing what I'm doing now if it was not for that. So he does mean a lot to me. I actually once called his uncle, Mike McGlinchey Sr., actually, because his dad and his uncle work at the same place. I was trying to find his dad's phone, but his uncle was there, and I spoke with him for like a half hour and gave me some interesting pointers.
Yeah.
Really,
Philadelphia kids.
Yeah, the Exton area. Yeah.
Yep.
I just want to get a chance to meet him, and it's also pretty cool that he's doing games with Barber, which was a kid that I liked when I was little too. So
Yep.
Yeah, I just it just kind of stuck with the fact that even here in New York, there's just, at least with the Steelers when you were younger, there was definitely probably a lot of Steelers fans even then, and you were closer to like the Mid-Atlantic. I mean, I'm someone in the Northeast rooting for a team in the Deep South that isn't known for being that successful, has a lot of Hall of Fame snubs, that hardly get much attention, and is not very big in terms of its national fan base. So,
well, at the time, the Steelers were not very big in terms of the national fan base, and the Falcons had been to a Super Bowl. I mean, the Steelers had not sniffed a championship game at the time that I became a fan. So you're only familiar with the Steelers post dynasty.
Well, I mean, I know about their history beforehand, and I know that, but because I'm so surrounded by, Steelers are like a household, even the Raiders, I don't even really call Raiders fans. I call them Raiders historians, because like, it's just like that, those fans from that dynasty era and like everyone else just almost doesn't exist, but they're very pervasive and they still exist around because of that era. And I've seen more Saints fans. I've seen more Buccaneers fans. I think I've even seen more Panthers fans.
Oh boy, another fumble.
By who this time?
This time it was it was Justin Fields. He's coming. He'd broken the pocket. He was running for a first down, and then boom.
Sloppy game today.
Ball's knocked out, and now the Vikings. Of course, they just drew a big old penalty for sportsmanlike contact because of conduct becomes an extremely
sloppy game,
an extremely involved celebration. But so he drops back to pass. he sees a big void. He's right. He sees a giant void, right? I mean, there's just free yards right in front of him. And wisely, he takes off. And then he makes a very strange cut. He probably should have broken closer to, yeah. So Josh Metellus has been trying to punch the ball. In fact, Metellus did punch the ball out earlier, but he recovered it. But now, and then there's a little dance moves in here in the end zone. But yeah, and so it cost him 15 yards. But yeah, he could have avoided Metellus, I think. And the blocker, I think he thought the blocker was going to go get Metellus, and the blocker for some reason didn't. He had a receiver running out in front of him who just whiffed on Metellus. But either way, he should have been probably heading a little more this way. Well, you can't. A little more. So can you see that? Yeah. Well, so I guess it's reversed. So I'll do it this. He should have been heading. So yes, reversed. So it'd be that way. But either way, it's a fumble and recovered by the Vikings. And the Vikings have a 1 point
very
lead.
sloppy games. A lot of turnovers. A lot. Now I got to give credit to the defense. They've done their part. And I'm saying the stuff with the Falcons because Sunday I'm going to the game against the Jets.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, first time I'm wearing, like I don't really wear Falcons gear in public for obvious reasons. There's not many of me.
Right. All right.
And also, I don't wear it often because especially when I was younger, I was afraid of getting bullied.
Oh.
Yeah, there's that too.
Sure. Yeah.
You ever see people that are fans of some teams but just kind of keep it on the down low because they're afraid of getting bullied?
I mean, I guess. Here there's a fair number of Green Bay fans, and some of them are more low key than others. Some are very, very open about it. But I never got bullied for fandom. I got bullied, but it had nothing to do with fandom. It had to do with like other stuff. We were blockbusters. We were the first black family in Hollywood Maple Halls in our subdivision of the next subdivision. So 2 subdivisions over. We were the first black family in that entire area. So yeah,
wow, that's how was that like?
What do you think it was like?
Oh yeah, I know. well, I know obviously, but I can just look at but you've experienced that.
Oh, I have, yes. So
were there many colored only signs? Did you see the Klan and stuff like that?
Well, it was not so much the Klan. No, Virginia is a little more genteel in its racism, but there were people who would not let their children play outside if I was outside.
The hell?
Yeah, racism's a real thing, Vinny.
I know, but just hearing that just doesn't sound right because now I'll say for here, it's like my population here in West Side, so it's 98% white. So
right. I'm not surprised to hear that either.
Is it because of I guess me not being aware of some things?
Well, I mean,
that's fine. You can say it. I don't care.
When you were blockbusters, there are people who are going to be immediately hostile because they think you're going to quote unquote bring down the value of the property and all that stuff. So that's part of it.
Oh yeah, they still do that here because whenever they think of new land, the reason why they don't want it is because the poor people coming in, they're going to raise down the value.
Right. So the Vikings are going to pass on a chance for a 61-yarder. They're going to punt.
Yeah, you probably don't want to. I mean, unless you really want to. I mean, the game's 10-9 with almost 2 minutes to go.
And they go ahead and pretend they're going to fake and take a 5-yard delay of game penalty, and will then go ahead and punt. But yeah, I mean, all the stuff you can imagine, and then later when school busing starts, I end up being bussed. Well, so they bussed black kids from Berkeley into my school when I was in first, second, and then I was at a different school in 3rd grade. And then 4th, 5th, and 6th, I got bussed because I was in a white neighborhood to a black school in Berkeley. So there was a lot of sort of interesting. I remember all my little white friends being terrified because Berkeley scared them. There's the idea of going to a black neighborhood scared them. But yeah, it's like I said, race is a societal construct and all that stuff that, genetically there's really no basis for it. but it very much does exist because people believe it exists. So
it just feels weird hearing that because, like, up in the Northeast, Long Island is also pretty segregated itself.
Very much so, yeah.
Like extremely segregated. Like you look at like North Babylon, which is literally north of us. It's like majority Latino and black. The only white people are just older people. Like as time has gone on, it's gone more and more and more diverse. Remember my grandfather before he died told my dad that the South Shore will be entirely minorities. I don't know if that's really an accurate thing or him just being an old, like 80-something-year-old saying that. Like, it does sort of feel like he's right, but, I'm not really sure what to think about it. Because you go a bit further north, there's more white people. You go a bit further south, there's more Latinos. There's more blacks. You see more Muslims, too. You go in some areas, they're more Jewish, a whole bunch. And usually the Russian Jews, if you go in some areas in Nassau.
Right. Sure. Right. Some of the ones that maybe used to live in Brighton Beach and migrated or things like that. The like I said, the thing that you learn from being a Black American, especially if you're one that really pays attention to this country's history, is that there's always going to be a need to try to push someone down, right, towards the the bottom strata. Some of that is to make sure that there are people to call upon if you need low-skilled, low-paid laborers. That's one of the reasons. Some of them are just sort of purely, tied into capitalism. Also, some is tied into white supremacist thinking. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into building a permanent underclass or semi-permanent underclass. But, luckily, my father had GI Bill benefits, which helped him to buy a house, helped him to get his education, and changed his life, and by the extension, changed the life of his children, and will change the life of my children, and all that stuff. Add on infinitum. Before we close out the show, is there anything else you wanted to say?
Yeah, I mean, I was just saying that big end for Week 12. There's lots of more exciting football to see, and we're entering the final third of the NFL regular season.
Yep. This is where teams make their quote unquote playoff push. This is where if you're a fantasy player, you have your last few chances. Some places have already closed out the trade market, but if you're in a league where trading is still allowed, you want to make those last few trades. Are going to help you and push you towards your fantasy playoffs. And anything, just like in the real football, anything can happen once you get in the playoffs. But I have a fantasy article dropping in a couple of days about players that you should pick up, players on the rise, and players you may want to move on from, who are just going to drag you down if you keep running them out and toss them in your roster, or keeping them on your bench. You find someone with better upside that you can at least have an opportunity to pick up, maybe pick up a win. But yes, you can look for that on Team NBS Media in the next couple of days. I'll also do something about the coaching carousel, a video for the coaching carousel for both college and NFL. NFL coaching carousel hasn't done a lot. We just have one, but I'll mention some candidates that I would like to see interviewed for Frank Reich's job, and what was Frank Reich's job. It's not his job now. But and then also some of the things for college football. I'll do some videos for some of the candidates maybe to take over the offensive coordinator position with Oklahoma. Oregon State having lost their head coach to Michigan State, and some others, who I can foresee moving to other places. But it's been a pleasure, as always, Vinny.
Indeed. Stick around for the back. We'll see you guys next time. We'll have another live stream on Thursday night. Take care, everyone.
Yes. Have a good evening.